Jagrup Singh Charitable Trust, Thakur College of Science, NSS Unit. I, Uday Bhan Yadav, NSS Program Officer and Coordinator, Department of Microbiology, welcome our respected Principal Madam, Dr. Mili Jasan, our guest speaker, Ms. Nanda Gotadkar, organizing committee, NSS volunteers, and dear students. Sexual harassment, assault, and abuse can happen anywhere, including in online spaces. Together, we can work to further reduce with the goal to eliminate sexual assault from everywhere. As we connect online, we can learn how to practice digital consent, intervene when we see harmful content or behaviors, and ensure that online spaces, whether they be workspaces, classrooms, social media platforms, or otherwise, are respectful and safe. Each year, Sexual Assault Awareness and Program Month, that is SAAPM, is recognized in April, and the main focus is on creating the appropriate culture to eliminate sexual assault. The, the 2019 to 2021 Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month theme is Protecting Our People and Protect Our Mission. To create more awareness on the topic, sexual harassment awareness and unprofessional behavior in the social setup, I welcome Mrs. Nanda Gotadkar. She is an ICF, that is International Coaching Federation Certified Business Leadership Wellness Coach. She works with young leaders to create a winning mindset. She brings to the table 16 years of experience as a counseling psychologist who has worked in the area of emotional, mental, and behavioral transformation. She has been a counselor, mentor, friend, and guide to most of the students and faculty. We are happy of our continued association with Jagru Singh Charitable Trust, Thakur College of Science, and welcome Nanda Madam today to share some inspiring and motivational words for our students and faculty members. Welcome you all.
Good morning, Principal Sir, Principal Madam, and all my dear teachers, HODs, and dear students. Today, we are going to be talking about a very sensitive topic. It is a topic which we normally, because of our traditional culture, do not address so much. But now, since the times have become very different and the global markets have, the world has become a global field, so it is important that all the students are aware of what exactly happens, what goes on, what is called sexual harassment and what happens, and how to protect ourselves from all of this. Now, I would like all my students to understand this, that in school life, we share and we teach students about good touch and bad touch. And that is in the earlier school life that we get them to know and understand about this, as to when is it that a touch is considered not healthy or not good. But as we grow up, we know and we understand a lot of things. And then there are complexities that we face. Our body changes, our looks changes, we become attractive, or even if we feel we are moderate or average, we still are grown up men and women, or other young men and women, and we can create a sense of excitement in others. And sometimes it can also be that we may be the ones who are kind of, who need the restraint. So these are some things we need to become very aware of and to know. Till about 1997, there was nothing to protect women from the sexual harassment. There was no term or term coined to understand sexual harassment. Because we are a male-dominated society, so whatever happened would be considered as a normal way of happening. And whenever there were rape cases or there were molestations or there was any kind of unwanted, unacceptable, unwelcomed gestures or things, so we'll still stay on the first one only. It was not given any importance. It was just thought that, oh, it happened to somebody, it didn't happen to us, it was somebody else, and something must have happened, they may have done something. Usually the attitude was to think that the victim, the person who has suffered, was probably the culprit who did something. That was a generic attitude that was there in the earlier times. In 1997, in 1992, there was this Rajasthani lady, Bhavri Devi, who was Banwari Devi, I'm sorry. She was working for the Rajasthan government's women's development program called Sathin. And she, as a rural leader, was working towards creating awareness for, that girl child should not be, killed, that the girls should be educated against dowry system, against sati, against child marriages and all else. It was in one such instance, so that while she was working for this particular government women's development program, one such incident where a 9-month-old baby was being, there was a kind of a conversation about the child getting a child marriage, which जो बाल विवाह हो रहा था, वो बाल विवाह की बातें की हो रही थी. Like they were deciding to get this child, go for a child marriage. And this lady, because she was part of this Sathin movement which was run by the government and they were bringing changes at the rural level, she stood up and she took a stand for it and said, this cannot happen, the child is only 9 months old. Now this child was a Gujar child, which is apparently a higher caste or community in Rajasthan, and culturally it is such that a woman who's of a lower class cannot and does not have the right to speak or say anything in the matter. Especially women cannot speak in the matters of men. And in this particular case, like otherwise also, they cannot say anything to the landlords and to the zamindars and all that. And now this Banwari Devi took a stand against this Gujar child marriage, and it did not go down well with the people over there. And as a punishment for having overstepped, her husband was beaten unconscious, and not happy things happened to her. Like, to put it in one word, she was gang raped. And she went around pillar to post, not having any kind of support from anywhere. And it is much later that in 1997, after continuous efforts by a lot of women organizations who took to the streets for this particular case, and there was a lot of media coverage also, that this lady, that finally some guidelines was created, and this was called the Vishaka guideline. Those were among the first steps taken towards understanding about this sexual harassment, what really constitutes of it, and what is it that happens, and all that whole thing, the various things that were formulated. So we will talk about it a little later. I wanted to give you a little background about it. So let us begin by understanding one by one, step at a time. So could we change the slide, please? Let's go to the second slide. In this particular seminar today, we will only be covering types of workplace harassment, because many of our our students are going to get ready for campus placements and other things. We would like to make this topic very confined to this aspect, because otherwise sexual harassment is a huge topic. It can go from anywhere to travel, to housemaids working at home, to garment factory people, to people in the farms who are working. It can be very, very large. So to make it really very tight and concise for all our students to understand, basically what we are trying to do is create an awareness, okay, and give a voice to a particular aspect that has never been spoken all this while. So the types of harassment is verbal and written, it is physical, it's visual, and it's digital. Verbal could be anything that is said, written is anything that could, that is, or verbal, it's also verbal, non-verbal. Written is anything that may be written and given in terms of, not unethical words or unprofessional words, or things that are humiliating and insulting, or anything in the physical in form of touching or otherwise. Visually, looking at somebody in any of the areas which are intimate zones, or which are, like body shaming, any kind of things. And as Sir today earlier said in his introduction, that now even digitally, we are experiencing a lot of harassments, because many people have shared that they receive certain images and pictures and links to certain sites or certain particular things, videos which are not very happening. Okay, so harassment, what exactly does it mean? An act or instance of harassing, tormenting, vexation, or intimidation. It can also be daily harassment of bullies at school, harassment of daily life when you're traveling, you're meeting people, you're interacting. The condition or fact of being harassed, the stress of harassment, and discrimination. Okay, where your dignity has been violated. So once you've understood harassment, let's go to the next slide and understand a little more. Harassment covers wide range of behaviors of an offensive nature, commonly understood as behaviors that demean, humiliate, embarrasses a person, and is characteristically defined by its unlikelihood in terms of social and moral reasonables. Whatever is socially and morally not reasonable, it is these kind of behaviors that are continuously showered upon the victim or the person who is at the brunt bearing end of this. Okay, next slide. Now, having understood what is harassment, let us go one step further and understand what is sexual harassment. Behavior that is characterized by the making of unwelcome and inappropriate sexual remarks or physical advances. Whenever people are making remarks where, they're saying things which are not healthy, which are not professional, or they're making any kind of physical advances, which means they are coming very close into your space, which is only for intimate relationships or family relationships. If that space is violated or is touching in some place or doing something, then these are called as unwelcome and inappropriate sexual remarks or physical advances. The victim or harasser may be a man or a woman. There is no gender particularity about it being only a woman or only a man, because increasingly people are talking about there being a neutral gender approach to this sexual harassment bit. We will come to that later, how much of it we are doing it in India and otherwise. But this is something that it has to be, it can be anybody. It can be a man or it could be a woman. Victim doesn't have to be of the opposite sex. Now, many a times there are certain men who are known to have a little feminine orientation. Okay, they are a little feminine in the way they walk, the way they talk, and I mean, for whatever reasons, biologically or otherwise, whatever their orientation may be, sometimes it is seen that men are very harsh with them, or other, the male counterparts are very harsh on them. That's why the victim doesn't have to be of the opposite sex necessarily. Harasser can be immediate supervisor. It can be your immediate boss. The supervisor can be your employer's, agent. The supervisor can be a supervisor in another area, a co-worker, or even a non-employee. Anybody with whom you're interacting during your work hours, whether the person is a vendor, a supervisor, a co-worker, or even a non-employee, but with whom you are interacting while you are on the work premise, can be constituted as sexual harassment. Unlawful sexual harassment can happen without even economic injury to or discharge of victim, which means it is believed that sometimes, like Bollywood is pretty famous for that, or infamous for that, saying that there is a casting couch concept that exists over there. It's always been debatable. Some people say it is there, some people say it's a myth, but either which way, that is because they say about, the person wanting to get some economic benefit, whether it is in Bollywood or whether it is even in any institution where somebody wants a promotion or somebody wants to get some kind of appraisal or some increments in the organization or institution, has to give sexual favors to the immediate boss. So this is called unlawful sexual harassment. Harasser's conduct is unwelcome. If there are two consenting adults involved, it's another matter. But if it is something that one is not enjoying and is getting irritated with, then this is unwelcome and gets constituted as sexual harassment. Let's move on to the next slide. What are the types of sexual harassment? I just shared with you about, people wanting increments or wanting promotions or wanting some economic benefit. So that is called quid pro quo, which means this for that. You give me this and I will give you that. And it implies sexual favors for promotion, increments, and other perks. There is also been now defined that sexual harassment is not only the sexual harassment as in the physical aspects of that, but it's also hostile environment at work, which may include inappropriate touching, sexual jokes or comments. Very often, when men are standing together and they're sharing something, which is a very manly thing, you talk something because you're all men standing there and discussing something, or all boys standing there and discussing something, and you all laugh because it's very acceptable. But if somebody comes who's not enjoying these sexual jokes or comments, and particularly to make that person feel very embarrassed and humiliated if something is said, use of inappropriate words sexual jokes or comments is done, then that also gets counted as sexual harassment. Somebody who is repeatedly asking somebody out on a date when the person is refusing and saying, I am not interested. And the person, let's go for a date, let's go for a date. Now, in Indian context, a date for most young people, since I've been working with the youth for very many years now, I know that for youth, it is usually, it's like, okay, come, let's go and go for a movie. Let's go for probably just snack out and maybe some kind of, kind of a thing, which is not really everything, considering what happens in the West. In the Western culture, a date means if you're going out on a date, it means you are going to end up in an intimate relationship with the person you're going out for the date with, where it may be a physical relationship, maybe in more. But normally in the Indian context, dating is probably going for a movie. At best, if they feel they're in love or something, they may kind of hold hands or something like that. This is the best that I know and understand, though I also know and understand that there are a lot of inappropriate things also that happens, but I'm talking in a generic term of 80% of people, what happens. Okay, so work environment where offensive pictures are displayed. Somebody may be very, may show that the person is very religious, or the person is very, is a very prim and proper person, but sure enough, the person has an environment where there are offensive pictures displayed. If it's a man, it's a woman with plunging necklines or any something which is not ethical and which is unprofessional. But many people are known to have these things around in their workstations, causing their female counterparts to feel very offended and not happening. It's like it's a non-verbal communication to the person saying that this is what I consider. It can also be a woman, excuse me, puts up pictures of male models with very particular kind of pictures, with a bare shirt, with a tight trouser, or any such thing. And this can also be considered as the work environment where offensive pictures are displayed, and hence it's a kind of non-verbal sexual harassment case. Let's go to the next slide. So why does this sexual harassment happen? Of course, we know people say that in the workplace, it is like, it's a male-dominated society. So people, men feel that women are just sex objects, or they are just kind of there to be taken advantage of, or whatever. Those are some of the things. But sex being a taboo subject in India, most people know who can control themselves and do not have gentlemanly demeanor or upbringing or culture or finesse, can exploit the counterpart, because people will usually not report or complain. It's a subject where you're too scared to talk about it, lest you get you are put to kind of shame. Especially in the male counterpart, if the male is at a brunt bearing end where an aggressive female boss has made the employee feel abused, humiliated or something, if he dares to talk about it or complain about it, he will be made fun of by all his male colleagues, his peers. Arey, you couldn't handle a woman also, kind of a thing. Or, retorting to cheap comments and making the person who comes from maybe a very simple background, doesn't understand about all these kind of complexities, can feel very, very traumatized, So even a male, if a male is at the brunt bearing end of any kind of sexual harassment, sometimes finds it difficult to share and talk about it. worried that if he opens his mouth, the woman may turn around and make it look that he is actually the one who has traumatized her. And the whole case can turn against the man. So men tend to get very scared, but increasingly it is important that we must look at these situations in a non-gender form, because anybody can be at the brunt bearing end. Boundaries are not clearly drawn as to what is non-negotiable. When we get a high paying job, we don't mind working late hours, we don't mind a lot of things. We don't mind if there are just one or two men in the office and there are women around, or anything where these are the boundaries which needs to be cleared when you're taking on the job, that this is something I cannot do. I can stay back maybe for some time, but only when there are other women around. Okay, very often we even go to a doctor. A doctor cannot see females. If he's a male doctor, he cannot see females until and unless there is a female attendant or a nurse there or a female doctor there. Many of us, knowing about this, may just go into the clinic, and it can happen that we may get abused. So it also happens between doctors and nurses, doctors and patient. The doctors and patient is another ball game, but it goes on to another tangent altogether. But if you talk about work related specifically, then it happens between doctors and nurses also. There was one very, very sad case of a nurse, Aruna, who now has passed away, where she was raped by the ward boy of the hospital, and I think it was a KEM hospital. And she had gone into one of the rooms to bring out certain supplies for the nurses' quarters, like nurses' room from where they give the medicines, the cotton and all that for the patient. So she had gone to replenish some supplies, and at that point of time, this ward boy, he went and he attacked her, and he raped her by putting a chain round her neck, and because of which the oxygen to her brain was cut off, and subsequently for very many years, close to 40-45 years or more, that lady was a vegetable. The nurses of the hospital took care of her, and she was just there on the bed. So, which is why boundaries of any kind is very important, that this I can do, this I cannot do. Internal complaint committees are usually on paper and not so active. There is a government regulation that says if there are 15 and more employees, the employer is bound by law to have an internal complaint committee, which will take immediate action in case of any issue that is reported, and they will support the victim in whichever way that is needed, whether it need to be taken to the doctor, the mental health specialist, or give them a vacation or some recouping time or anything. The employer is under moral obligation to accept the internal complaint committee's suggestions and whatever it is that they suggest. And one of the tools for sexual harassment is also subjugation, which I shared with you in my first story of Banwari Devi of Rajasthan. That just to make her feel that you are nobody to tell us. In fact, in the famous Nirbhaya case also, though it's not relevant over here, what happened was where she put up a fight, or her boyfriend put up a fight, the four people who were responsible wanted to show that, listen, we can, we can subjugate you to a point of no return. And it's history, whatever happened. Let's go to the next slide. So some of the statistics and data that has been published by Ministry of Work and Child Development, number of sexual harassment at workplace in India jumped by 54%, that is from 371 cases in 2014 to 570 cases 2017. And neither you nor me need to be told that these are figures which are probably, which are very monitored and put over there, because the real number of cases far, far outweigh all of these numbers. 2018, in the very first 7 months of 2018, there were already 533 cases, just 40 cases less than what was in 2017. So in the next 4 or 5 months that were remaining, it would have crossed that figure. 823 cases in 2019. And in 2019, 100 best companies, in which even companies like Infosys, ICICI Bank, and some other famous companies have actually seen a rise of 30% in the number of reported cases. Such is the statistics and data. Let's go to the next one. So, prevention of sexual harassment, strict guidelines and conscious policies to eliminate sexual harassment, creating safe workplace for all sexes. Whether you're a man or woman, or you have another, a sensitive or a gentle orientation, it doesn't matter. What matters is that the workplace, because in India, we may not have a lot of, the third gender may not be so consciously visible in workplaces, though now it is happening in the world, fashion and other places, modeling and all that. But abroad, it is like you will see people working everywhere, like in banks or in malls or everywhere else. So increasingly, it has become very, very important to create safe work for all sexes. Educating and orienting employees with latest policies, because from 1992 to 2021, so many things have changed, so many things have been added. So it's very important that we educate and orient our employees. In certain cultures, again, this is not to offend any particular culture or any particular region for that matter, but in certain communities, it's an accepted way of life, where women are only there for the physical or sexual pleasure of man, and they fulfill the needs of a man. It's a very accepted form of culture, and when such people come to work in metro cities, it becomes increasingly important that we teach them, orient them to the latest policies and definitions of sexual harassment. Like I said, as different cultures have different understanding towards this. Taking immediate and appropriate action when employee complains and addressing it in a transparent way is very important. If we do not take immediate action, like in the Banwari Devi's case, when she could not get any immediate support from the government, like the courts of law or something, she was feeling completely lost, that, her very dignity, her very honor, everything was taken away from her, and she had no support. So whenever such a complaint comes, it's immediately important to take immediate action and do it in a very transparent way, that the victim also knows, okay, this is the truth, this was what was done, whether the committee is there, whether the committee is doing a, kind of inquiry, these are the steps that will be done, this is what is going to happen. It is very crystal clear. So it gives the victim also a sense of, yes, there is some justice that's happening, because the whole system is very transparent and done in a way where the victim feels that, yes, this is a safe environment. Keeping policies relating to sexual harassment gender neutral. Just as a reference point, I was looking up in 2015, 6,822 complaints from men was there, to 2019 when it went up to 17% with 7,514 complaints. In between, it was that 16 and a half, 17% over the whole graph. So from 2015 to 2019, there was almost a 2% increase in the number of cases that were there. Okay, so which is why it's very, very important to keep policies relating to sexual harassment gender neutral. There has been in 2018 saw the Me Too moment, where when the Me Too moment happened, Tanush Datta came forward and she accused Nana Patekar, one of the actors of Bollywood, for inappropriate behavior. After her, Vinita Nanda came forward, she accused somebody. Then so many people came forward and accused somebody or the other. This moment picked up because there was an international moment for this, and the Me Too moment became a very powerful moment to create awareness, to create a kind of awareness for prevention of sexual harassments. The laws and policies became very this. A general oral awareness was created in the minds of men and women that certain inappropriate, unprofessional, and unethical behaviors will not be accepted. There were people standing with posters, there were people standing with banners, and they accepted or appreciated these Vishaka guidelines, which was what is it, what is considered a sexual harassment, what goes into it, what needs to get done, and how it needs to get done was all shared in this. This was then superseded by a new law that was passed in 2013, where they made the rules even more clear. 2013 also saw the POSH Act, was Prevention, Prohibition, and Readdressal Act for Sexual Harassment. Then 2019 saw the International Labor, they may happen at different the periods between them may be long and far apart, very difficult to create a pattern or understand that this is happening. Somebody may just walk away by saying that, oh, but I come from that kind of culture and this is the way I am, and I just say these things. And a lot of these things, it is not acceptable. So legislation alone is insufficient in combating sexual harassment. The person themselves may be aware, which is why now schools and colleges are being made to have seminars and workshops for their students to make them aware of what can happen once they step out of these protective environments. A lot of young girls anyways experience a lot of kind of indecent behavior, unwelcome gestures and looks by young men or by people who we can say are who come from not the very kind of the uncouth people, uncouth kind of people. Sometimes you come across them when you're traveling, and they may be kind of making comments or things which can make you cringe and want to just the earth opens up and takes swallows you up. What needs to also be understood is that root cause of sexual discrimination and bias within the workforce must be addressed in an effective and transparent way. So one is the legislation which comes from the government. The second is where organizations and institutions can bring up their own policies and rules and regulations as to how they will deal with sexual discrimination or kind of any kind of bias that comes up within the workforce, and how they're going to address it in an effective and transparent way. And to all of us over here, whether you're guys, you're girls, you're any of us over here present, a lady, a young girl, or a young man, or an elderly man, doesn't matter. We do not remain silent and suffer because unpleasant, uh, abusive language. At least when I'm around, it is not acceptable. So I basically live in a house of all men, like my husband, my two children. Of course, my husband is no more now, but my two boys are there. So all the time, people who come to my house are all men. So my boundary is very clear. As long as I am around, there will be no offensive language that will be accepted. So in wanting to become a part of the boys gang, we accept, chalo, ABCD कुछ बोल दिया तो क्या फर्क पड़ता है. But if you do not make your boundaries very clear, you have no right to complain later. Also, when you are with boys and girls, friends, whether you're a young teacher or a young student or you are anybody, we have a very friendly way of putting the arm around somebody. You have to be very clear whether or not that is acceptable to you or not, because it can begin from there and then it can go and start touching you in places where you're not comfortable. So right from the beginning, what is acceptable and what is non-negotiable, which is cannot accept at all, has to be very clear in your mind, and that is what you convey to the person. Also, your body language has to be, confident, so that with your body language, you're not expressing any kind of fear or any kind of nervousness for somebody else to misbehave with you. So thank you. I've been doing research for the last couple of days on the Google search engine, Wikipedia, Women's Rights Group, Health Records Bureau 2019, Economic, and Scroll in Dot. So these have been the places from where I have resourced my group. I think I will open the questions to the students if anybody has questions to ask, because it's very important that understanding that today was a day for awareness, creating an awareness. Since I'm speaking at a public platform, I've had to be very careful about what I share, how I share, and how much I share. So if anybody has particular questions, you can ask me and I will answer them. Otherwise, this whole workshop was about creating an awareness that we do not keep quiet and suffer in silence. Our college has a women's grievance cell, which is very active. We have regular meetings, and we also bring in people from the outside to become one of the panelists, so that it's not only school, college teachers and HODs and counselors or people like that. It's also people who are from the outside world, who are social workers. So it gives the comfort to the people that yes, you can share your issues. And as a counselor, I had always kept my doors open to even the male colleagues to share about anything that may be troubling them or that may not be a very happy scene for them at that point of time. And I'm very happy to say we have not had any such encounters in our institution. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, you are open. The forum is open to ask questions.
Nandaman, before starting our question and answer sessions, thank you so much for your kind words. And I would like to invite Millie ma'am, our principal madam, to webinar.
A very good morning to one and all. Respected today's speaker, Nanda Butatka madam, all the coordinators, staff members, and my dear students. Nanda ma'am, it was a wonderful session. Obviously, there will be a vote of thanks session also along with that, but I cannot stop saying this in between only. It was a marvelous, wonderful session. Especially, we have chosen this topic for our students to spread the awareness. For being, since these students are in the transition state, you can say they are coming out from the adolescence age to an adult, to become an adult. So they should understand properly all these type of aspects, because they will be ready to go into the field now. We are very much honored, ma'am, to have Nanda Miss amidst of us, who is not only a counselor but also a mentor for all of us. Also, would like to thank her to accept our invitation to be the speaker for today. Although you are there in US, still you have accepted our invitation. Thank you so much, ma'am. I'll not waste much time. Students, this particular webinar that we have conducted, it is actually not a webinar. You can say it is an awareness program that should be understood by the students, which was conducted by our NSS unit. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nanda ma'am, to come and give us the awareness. Over to you then. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So anybody has any questions, anybody wants to ask anything, or if anybody has an acceptable situation, maybe you cannot talk here on an open platform, you can take my email ID from Millie Ma'am. You can mail me and we will probably connect to discuss this. Yes, anybody has any other questions? All right, I understand. It's the first time we have spoken about a subject which is normally never spoken about. So I can understand that it's awkward for us to ask questions. But I know also that a lot of young minds have a lot of curiosity and there's a lot of sharing that you may want to do. So maybe we will see how we can organize to have a more intimate conversation or something like that. But meanwhile, for today, it was an awareness session. And I'm happy to have added to a little bit of awareness that you need to be aware of as you step into the world of work. Yes, Tahira Sheikh.
Okay. Hi, hello everyone. I'm Tahira Sheikh, Assistant Professor of PCSC. I thank Mrs. Nanda Podharkar for sparing time for her busy schedule and sparing awareness about this sensitive topic of sexual harassment for all the participants. I also thank Dr. Millie Shang Madam for giving us an opportunity to organize such webinar to encourage students about social awareness. I extend my sincere thanks to the member of management, coordinators, faculty, staff, and all the participants from all over the India. Last but not the least, I thank Mr. Udayban Yadav, NSS Program Coordinator, for his constant support for organizing this webinar. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
From my end, I would like to thank the management. I would like to thank Principal Sir and Millie Madam, Superintendent Sarita Ma'am, office staff, all the teachers and HODs, that it gives me a lot of pleasure and pride to see that we are growing leaps and bounds and we're keeping in rhythm, in touch with what's happening across the world. And this was a very, very important topic. And I'm so happy that we have shared this awareness with the students.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, from my end.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
So I take your leave there.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.